We can now begin the press conference. And first, I would thank the public for their patience for the release of the report number 69A on the Social Welfare Service Department on the administration of the lump sum grant by this department. Why did we delay submit the report till this day? The report has been quite detailed, made up of 97 paragraphs, because we know that we have far-reaching consequences to all sectors of the public, which are the users of various social services. About 165 NGOs to provide social services. And the government last year had provided 12.5 billion in subventions. So looking for the value for money perspective, we conduct 3 public hearings and subpoena a lot of documents, and finally completed the report number 69A. May I introduce? I'll just go our introduction. Besides being 2 members here who helped draft the report, and Mr. Justin Lam is the responsible member for the Social Welfare Department report, and the 97, parent 97 and parent 95, which outlined our committee's recommendations. Before I hand it over to Mr. Justin Lam, may I take this opportunity to acknowledge the contributions to social workers in providing various kind of services. So we feel that they made an immense contribution. And secondly, that their remuneration that have been the criticism of fattening the senior ranks, and whether it's substantiated, the report had made these observations, and especially for the lower to middle tier personnel, their remuneration in most cases compared to other sectors, I would say that they are falling behind, especially compared to the government pay levels. They are comparatively lower. However, we don't look into that, but just one of our observations that the biggest problem is in the staff turnover. It actually is a major problem here. So when Mr. Lam walk us through the report, and you can listen in detail before asking question. And thank you, Chairman. Like the Chairman said, the Public Accounts Committee have fully acknowledged the personnel of the social welfare sector for their services, especially to the disadvantaged groups and other people in need. They are indispensable. And exactly because the social welfare sector is a people-centric profession, we think that the personnel experience and capabilities are of most critical. And yet we notice that the turnover of social service personnel is quite high. According to the HKCSS and the WSD survey from 2013-14, the turnover is at 12.1%. From 2015 to 16, the turnover has risen to 15.2%. This time, the audit report of survey 6 NGOs. One of the NGO had turnover as high as 35%. And within 3 years, if it had been consistent over 35%, you could have just replaced the entire workforce in the NGO. So in the face of such high turnover, we are quite concerned, express dissatisfaction. On the other hand, we also noted that such high turnover demonstrate that the remuneration levels, when compared to the government pay scale, have shown a marked difference. The terms and conditions are not able to attract and retain talent. On the other hand, the administration wing had a technical circular memorandum to the SWD and the Labor Welfare Bureau that they should disclose the remuneration arrangements for the top three tier of the personnel. If the subvention exceeded operating income by 50%.
Unfortunately, the SWD delayed the implementation of that regulation by 6 years. It should have been implemented in 2003, that is in terms of announcement of the remuneration of high-ranking staff. However, this was delayed to 2009. What is more regrettable is that the calculation of the 50% income threshold proved to be controversial. The SWD, therefore, delayed until 2013 to seek clarification from the Director of Administration. But there is no written record about this, and there is no written follow-up. And the matter was put on hold. We think that this is highly unsatisfactory. Under the lump sum grant system, from the last review until now, there is a lapse of about 10 years. This is the time for another comprehensive review, which should be conducted as soon as possible. Frontline social welfare staff should be able to take part in this review to express their views so as to ensure that frontline workers are reasonably remunerated, so NGOs can attract and retain staff, so welfare services can be continued, so that we can have stable professional welfare services for the needy in Hong Kong. This is the conclusion of the lump sum grant system in Report 69A. Lump sum grant can be good for NGOs because they can have management autonomy and flexibility. And if they have any surplus, they can save it up for other purposes. But in the report, we can see that NGOs, some of them, can put aside huge surpluses, one of which has a surplus of $3.4 billion to $4.3 billion. Now, is that a result of depriving society of some services, or is it that they are hiring fewer staff, so the staff have a bigger workload? Why? And that is, would that be the reason for a high staff turnover? We have looked into that, and everything is in the report. If you have a chance, please read the report, because this is going to impact on the services that are available to the public. Now the floor is open for questions. Would any other member like to say anything? If not, the floor is open to questions. Please introduce yourself. Sorry, speaker not coming through. Speaker not coming through.
Of social work personnel may be due to the difference in their salary levels and that of the government pay scale. Could you tell us what you think the government can do to rectify this problem? Thank you.
Basically, it's not what we think is right. We only identify the problem and study the issues and highlight that there is a problem that the Social Welfare Department must take note of this staff turnover, particularly some NGOs have set very high from 15% to 20% as high as that staff turnover. For any organization to have a staff turnover, it highlights there should be some problems. And the problems probably due to a mixture, a basket of factors. And pay is one of those. Another thing, overstressed work is another. Because majority of the social workers, they are dedicated workers providing services to the underprivileged. That is our concern, that the quality of service to the underprivileged must not be compromised. Okay.
And we also urge the government to conduct a thorough review of the lump sum grant system as soon as possible. And they have to listen to the opinion of the frontline staff members of the social welfare sectors.
Yes? I will ask this in a simple way. The lump sum grant system has been criticized for many years. Now you have identified these problems. Do you think it is good to abolish the lump sum grant system and let us go back to the older system? Do you think that is the best way out? This started in 2001, and NGOs were given the choice for the lump sum grant system. And from then to now, out of 165 NGOs, 3 did not choose to join the system. 3 or 5? 5. Is it good? Well, personally, after reading the reports and studies, the lump sum grant means well because NGOs would have the flexibility to use money according to their understanding of the services needed by society, and so money can be wired for necessary services. So I don't think it is necessary to abolish the entire system, but other members may have other views, but this is my personal view. Chairman, I agree with you. During the hearings, I discussed this LSG system with Dr. Law Chi Kwong. Last time, the review of LSG was in 2008. Actually, LSG is a good system in terms of financial management. Frankly speaking, it is a kind of standard budgeting, but operationally, well, as you can see during our hearings, we have identified different problems. For example, people don't follow the guidelines or the LSG manual, and there may be management problems. And many NGOs just do not have a transparent pay scale. And when the policy was made, no consultation of stakeholders took place. We believe there should be improvements. And in the report, we have listed in detail what should be done. These are our proposals. But I think the main thought is that we never negated the concept of LSG. Let me supplement a point. Number one, in any system, the most important thing is transparency and accountability. With regard to this system, we think that these two aspects are deficient. And one of the main controversies of the LSG system is that it brings about a high wastage rate of frontliners, and therefore the stability of service has been compromised, and the remuneration for frontline staff might have gone down. Now, would that affect the quality of services given to the public? That is our biggest concern. If the administration can complete a review of the LSG as soon as possible, and if they can come up with directional proposals to increase its transparency and accountability, and most importantly, how we can ensure that social welfare staff are reasonably remunerated so that they can be attracted and retained, and to make sure that quality of service can be maintained. This is most important. Mr. Ho, Chairman, maybe you can go to para 95 of the report. It lists the advantages of the LSG system, and that is there will be more flexibility and it can subject the NGOs to less strict control. But then there are now negative effects, and the administration has not come in time in order to tackle them. And if you can go to the last paragraph of our recommendations, we think that talent is what the welfare sector relies on most to provide quality service. And this is what other members have mentioned. And also, frontline social workers have provided service to society, but they are not properly recognized. This is how the LSG has been criticized and why it has been criticized by society. If we can urge the administration to conduct a review ASAP in order to tackle the deficiencies of the system, then whether or not it should be abolished, then we will know the answer to this one. Thank you. Any other questions? If you go to para 96 and also 95, you will see our recommendations. Next one.
Metro Radio. So you mentioned that on the staff turnover, the administration had overlooked the problems. So Dr. Lau Chi-kwong, in his speech, he mentioned that this year they will add 1,200 people, and he noted that he reached a manpower bottleneck. If it will devote more resources, that in the next few years, it's hard to add 100 of professional positions in turn of would they have an effect on drawing people to the talent to the sector? In reviewing to the LSG system, were you able to achieve to have the remuneration to be on par with the government's pay scale? So I haven't heard from Dr. Law, so thank you for recapping his statements. So these are mere suggestions. So he had to explain to us. So it's very difficult for us that without listening to him, what can be done and could not be done. That because this is not the end of the whole episode with the release of the report, we make sure that it can follow the suggestion, and the government have to explain why it cannot or can follow the suggestions. So that we raise the issues to hopefully they'll be aware of the problems of this sector. I think it needs time to understand, or maybe they were quite clear about the problem. However, 3 months of investigation, we bring out this series of issues, and hopefully for the sake of the sector and for the public interest, reserving the services and to make sure that these services can be safeguarded. And let me supplement that during our hearing, and there will be a question on the NGO services in which the amount and the quality services are not up to standard by the NGO, and the relevant explained that they have lacked the manpower. Since they are not social workers but from other professionals sectors, and these workers, when compared to because government position, there will be a major gap. So they have great difficulty in recruiting staff. We don't deal with this issue directly, the problem would only deteriorate. I haven't heard the rationale from Dr. Low, and every year the government is sitting on a huge amount of surplus. I believe the government has enough financial resources to devote more resources to the social service sector to improve their services and staff remuneration. I think the government is capable of doing so. It's a matter of willing or not. And like you said, recruiting new staff, and let's say 1,200, and and high turnover, as high as 30% in some organizations, are two different matter. So staff turnover and new entrants are two issues. If the new entrants think they're not able to exploit their talent or lack enthusiasm to do so, I don't know what the secretary has said. So he need to seriously review this problem. That why the staff turnover have been so high. Apple Daily and chairman on members. So the report has reviewed the issues under the LSG system. What is your opinion of the SFW monitoring of the LSG system? And another issue with the staff remuneration. So the report pointed out that some NGOs not following the midpoint salaries of the government pay scale. So either they were falling below the midpoint, while the management ranks positions are paid above the midpoint salaries. You're suggesting reducing the gap. So why are you suggesting pegging the social worker personnel to the government pay scale? Why don't you suggest pegging that to the government pay scale? And the PAC has the responsibility to review the number 69A report, and the scope of the report only covers that the performance for the past performances, where you use a word like dismay. It's having made clear in the report. And in terms of their attitude, so the report has been very clear. Then we touches on that on every paragraph, and the whole committee have discussed and agreed before putting them down. So you can look at the report. It's been clear that we think that the social welfare department has failed to do their proper job. Well, in 2003, for the first 3 tiers of the personnel remuneration, they wait till 2009 to disclose them. So, how do you confirm that what is the other 50% of the calculation? This has yet to be made clear today. So, in terms of the communication to NGOs, has not been too well, and the monitoring is weak. So, we made it very clear in the report that for each item we had explained clearly and why we offered our opinions. So this report is not only about criticism. The most part of this report is to hope that they can look forward to enhance governance. So I will hand it over to the deputy chairman on the issue of governance, Mr. Kent Leung. On the issue of governance, a lot of the NGOs have the management committee or the board of directors, and we can see very often that the attendance of these members and board members are very low, and yet they will still be reappointed. I think it might have to do with that we don't have enough professionals with management experience to participate in the management of NGOs. We hope that more members of the public, especially the professionals and those with management experience, could engage more in the management of the NGOs, so that the governance of the NGOs can be more transparent and move in pace with the times. Any other questions? We can just read out the proposals that would attempt to formulate a transparent and staff remuneration policy that is competitive enough and recognize and retain talent. And like you said, and the government pay scale could be of reference value, so we cannot really offer any policy proposals. So we're not allowed to bring up any policy issues. So for the policies, they will be discussed at electrical panels instead at the PAC. Mr. Ho? So Mr. Shek had made my point. So after we point out the problems, the government is willing to address greatly and offer solutions. So your proposal could be one of the solutions, whether it is the only one to exceed the scope of the report.
We really hope that the administration will face up to the report and come up with proposals, and then this will be taken to the panel, and other members and also members of the public can follow up at the panel. Last but not least, we ask Mr. Lam to give a conclusion. Members of the press, the social welfare sector questioned the lump sum grant system, thinking that it has brought about a top-heavy structure. In this report, we have exposed that high-ranking staff are remunerated in such a way that their salary is not made public according to the policy, so the public cannot monitor whether these organizations are top-heavy. And as for lower-ranking staff, we can see a high turnover rate, and we can probably believe that these are middle-ranking or low-ranking staff. These objective data make us worried that the remuneration for such staff are below par. We hope the administration can conduct a review ASAP so as to bring down the high turnover rate by a wide margin. We'd like to have a better salary for staff, and so quality of service can be enhanced. Thank you very much. If you have further questions, you can ask us while you meet us in the corridor. Every one of us can take your questions. Thank you very much.